Once again, I offer you a warm welcome, and to those who are also watching live stream, whether at their home or there are a number of people that are down in Schindler Hall here on campus, and so we appreciate their patience with that and welcome them into the celebration. And for those who are seated in the choir loft, how much did those tickets cost? It's pretty good. As we gather together today, we hear this very common or maybe even familiar reading from the gospel about Luke's account of the birth of Jesus. And we hear all the different components about the census and the inn and the baby that's going to be a sign lying in blue or lying in swaddling clothes in a manger, the angels that appear to the shepherds, all that kind of stuff. It's very familiar to us. And this season, we do celebrate the gift of Jesus, the gift that we will receive of his life, of his love, of his salvation, because the birth of Jesus is celebrated mainly because of everything else that Jesus did, right? Because of all that he taught, of all the actions that he did, his healing, but most importantly, his suffering, his death, his resurrection, the salvation and the love that he offers to each of us. Now, how many of you are going to receive presents this year? Are you going to receive presents? How many of you are excited to receive presents? Now, when I was younger, I had a lot more excitement about receiving presents. Like, what was I going to get? And still occasionally, every once in a while, I get a gift that is very moving to me, almost moves me to tears. I did one of those this year, and you're going to be surprised what it was. A group of friends went in, and they got me a PS5. I was like, oh, they're so generous. I couldn't believe, right? So I know that that's not the most theologically sound gift, but just wanted to share. Anyway, as I've grown older, it's transitioned some to where I love to give gifts, to be intentional about what is that gift and what joy does that bring to someone's heart or to someone's lives. And as we gather here, part of that gift giving is a representation of the great grace and graciousness of God, about how he desires to bring us joy, about how he desires to bring us freedom, about how he desires to give us love in our lives, about what he hopes for us and for all of humanity, that God is giving us something beautiful and something wonderful in the birth of a child. I first heard this story from Pope Francis on the Mass at night from about 4 years ago, and it really struck me. He talked about a legend that kind of follows on today's gospel reading. And so that legend is that the shepherds, having heard that there's going to be a sign for them of a baby wrapped in swaddling clothes and lying in a manger, that they go to find that sign, right? So they are on their way, and they start to think that we should bring some gifts. We should bring something to give to the baby Jesus, right? We should offer something in adoration of that baby. And so shepherds are notoriously poor in Jesus' day. They didn't have much. So some of them may have taken some of the works of their labors. They may have had something from the field or something like that. Maybe some of them have been holding on to something precious in their family, passing it down from generation to generation. And they went home before going to the stable to give it to Jesus. But they brought that with them. But there was one shepherd who was so poor that he had nothing. Nothing to give, nothing to offer. And yet he went with the other shepherds, and as they came in, Mary and Joseph are there, and they're starting to come forward and give them the gifts. And if you can imagine, how many of you have ever had a baby? Your hands are full most of the time, right? Like you've got a lot to do with that. And the shepherds are trying to give the gifts to Mary, but Mary is holding Jesus, and she's like, well, what do I do with the baby, right? What do I do with baby Jesus? And she looks around and she sees a shepherd with empty hands. And so she hands the baby Jesus to the shepherd who brought nothing. For us to receive the gift of Jesus, sometimes we have to empty ourselves out. There are things that we have to let go of to receive this gift. There are ways that we have to be open to grace, be open to love, be open to mercy, that we have to have at least an inkling and an initial openness to the work of God in this world, to the work of God for us and to us. As we come to this Christmas, and I hope all of your gifts are as great as a PS5. But I hope that all of us take just a moment to, in this liturgy and in this season, to open our hearts to God's love, to be willing to receive something of what God has to give, to being open to that gift that was given for us and is always given for us. May we celebrate in our families this birth of Jesus and the love that we share, which is a sign of God. But may we always be open to his gift to each of us personally.